Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 58 of the Unstoppable Entertainment Show, the most comprehensive entertainment news show on the internet. I am, of course, Nate Schaffner, otherwise known as the Unstoppable Nate. How are y'all doing today? I hope you're doing well. I hope everything is doing okay in everybody else's lives. And if not, I hope that this show provides a brief break from whatever it is that you're going through. I will. I'm going to try to do two shows today. I have the next couple of days off from work, so I'm going to try to do two shows today. But we'll see what happens. But before I get into the first show, I just wanted to remind everybody that if you like this show, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, spread the word, tell your friends. Also, if you have a comment, a question, or if you'd like me to talk about certain movies or franchises, you can email me anytime at the address listed in the description of this video. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started with this. So you might recall from either the last episode I did or the episode before that, I talked about this. There's this movie coming called Seance on a Wet Afternoon that's going to star Rachel Weisz and Matthew McFadden or McFadden. And it's going to be directed by Thomas Alfredson, who directed Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Well, there's been some more casting news regarding that film. This article is on The Hollywood Reporter, published by Scott Roxborough. This article says that Joe Alwyn from Hamnet and the Brutalist has joined the cast of Seance on a Wet Afternoon. So Joe Alwyn is going to be in this movie. Rachel Weisz is going to play Myra, who is a self-proclaimed medium who convinces her husband, Billy, played by Matthew McFadden, to kidnap the son of a wealthy family so she can lead the police to the missing child and legitimize her psychic abilities. So I'm assuming, maybe incorrectly so, I'm guessing that maybe Joe Alwyn is going to play the son of this wealthy family. So I'm not familiar with Joe Alwyn, only because I have not seen Hamnet or The Brutalist, even though both are on my list. As you might recall, I often say there's a lot that I have yet to watch, and those two movies are definitely on my watch list, especially since both of them have won Oscars in the past couple of years. But Joe Alwyn is going to be in this movie, and I said last time that this movie sounds interesting. But have you guys seen that? Have you guys seen Hamnet? Have you guys seen The Brutalist? If so, what do you guys think about Joe Alwyn being in this new film? Jump in the comment section and let me know your thoughts. Okay, so this next bit of news is really gets me very excited, and it's very interesting. So one of my favorite something going on back there. I don't know. So one of my favorite movie stars ever, and really one of my favorite people in the industry, is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I am a I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I was born in the 80s and grew up in the 90s, so I'm in that lucky generation where, he was everywhere. I mean, his name is synonymous with that time period. Um, and one of my favorite movies, I mean, I just his filmography speaks for himself. You know, I, I Predator is my favorite Schwarzenegger movie, uh, but it's a pretty close. Terminator 2 is a pretty close second. But anyway, so I'm a huge fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Um, and like I said, I he's one of my favorite people too. Just his enthusiasm and passion about anything and everything that he does, is kind of infectious. Um, and I once heard somebody describe Arnold Schwarzenegger as, like, he's they described Arnold Schwarzenegger by saying he's the epitome of the American dream. And that's I loved that. I mean, because uh he came over from Austria, um and he had goals that he wanted to achieve, and he achieved them, and in my opinion surpassed them. And it's really, he's just, in my opinion, I mean, we'll never have, um there's never going to be anybody like him ever again in the entertainment industry. And I'm a huge fan. What so one of one of the movies, I love this movie. Um and maybe I want to, maybe the Terminator gets too much credit for putting him. I mean, the Terminator made him famous, yeah, but Conan the Barbarian re- put him on the map. And I love the original Conan the Barbarian. I love that movie. It's masterfully directed by John Milius. Um, and you have James Earl Jones in that movie, and he's great. Um, um, and it's an awesome movie. Um, and then you had Conan the Destroyer, which sucked. Conan the Destroyer, I would put Conan the Destroyer up there with Highlander 2 as movies that completely destroyed the mythos and, uh, dare I say, the integrity of the first film. And then you had and then you had this. There was a spin-off in, I think it was 1985, called Red Sonja, and Arnold Schwarzenegger briefly appeared in that. It was kind of a glorified. It was more or less a cameo, but that movie was terrible. But Conan the Barbarian is awesome. Um, and uh, you had that tease at the end of the original Conan the Barbarian that teased uh, Conan the King, or King Conan. And uh, one of the great, I would say, one of the great anticipated movies, maybe ever, is a King Conan movie. There's been talks about it. It's been in kind of development hell. It's never really gotten off the ground. It's gone from talking about it to not talking about it. You know, we're it's on again, off again, on again, off again. Well, there's been some news. There was some news. I believe it was. I want to make sure I get my. It was about. It was three about 3 weeks ago, regarding a King Conan movie. This article is on the Hollywood Reporter, published by Ryan Gajewski and Boris Kitt. And this article says Arnold Schwarzenegger and Christopher McQuarrie are ready to take a swing at relaunching the Conan the Barbarian franchise. McQuarrie, who has helmed the 4 most recent Mission Impossible films, is attached to write and direct King Conan for 20th Century Studios, the Hollywood Reporter has confirmed. Schwarzenegger would reprise his role as sword-wielding Conan the Barbarian, which became an early signature part for the star after he starred in the 1982 fantasy film of the same name and its 1984 sequel that brought the character, created by author Robert E. Howard, to the big screen. Schwarzenegger announced McQuarrie's involvement in the project at the Arnold Sports Festival in Columbus, Ohio. That's cool. That's about an hour away from where I live, actually. Not to brag or anything. In teasing King Conan, Schwarzenegger told the crowd, "It's a great story where Conan was 40 years as king, and he gets complacent, and now he gets forced out of the kingdom slowly. Then there's conflict, of course, and then he somehow comes back, and then there's all kinds of madness and violence and magic and creatures. Now, of course, you have all the special effects, and the studio system has plenty of money to make those movies really big. So I'm looking forward." Yeah. So, yeah. Now, this is the most, like I said, over the years, a King Conan movie has kind of been on again, off again, on again, off again. This is the most concrete piece of news since, I would say, 2010, maybe earlier than that. This is the most concrete piece of news that we've gotten regarding a King Conan movie. And you have Christopher McQuarrie is attached to write and direct this movie. Now, like this article says, Christopher McQuarrie directed the last 4 Mission Impossible movies. And the last 4 Mission Impossible movies are awesome. They're awesome. And I would say, of the it, it is. I would say without hesitation that Christopher McQuarrie has directed the best Mission Impossible movies. He also directed um, the first Jack Reacher movie with Tom Cruise, which I believe does not get enough attention, and didn't get enough doesn't get enough credit. I mean that movie is not as if you're going to compare it to any of the Mission Impossible movies that Christopher McQuarrie directed, the Mission Impossible movies are better. But Jack Reacher, first Jack Reacher movie with Tom Cruise is pretty good. It's pretty good. Now, like I said, this is the most concrete piece of news that we've gotten about a King Conan movie since the 2010, maybe earlier. And I can understand. Um, I can understand why some people might not think this is actually going to happen, simply because of Arnold Schwarzenegger's age. I mean, he's damn near 80 years old. However, Arnold Schwarzenegger at 80 years old is in far better physical condition than most of us at 80 years old. um, I I think this is going to happen. Um, I you know, especially with it's not just Arnold's enthusiasm and passion about this project. When you have a director who is the caliber of a Christopher McQuarrie, who, especially after the success of the last four Mission Impossible movies, he is in a creative position now where he can do whatever he wants. And uh, I the fact that he's attached to do a King Conan movie is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Now, what's interesting about this is that Arnold Schwarzenegger has pointed out that 20th Century Studios has boatloads of cash to throw at this movie. What's interesting is that I don't necessarily think they need to do that. I think they could make a King Conan movie. Well, let's see. Just to uh, uh, satisfy my curiosity, the original Conan the Barbarian. Now, granted, that was 1982, but the original Conan the Barbarian was made for $20 million. Now, again, that was back in the early 80s. I I think if first of all, let me just say this. I really truly believe that this movie, now that Christopher McQuarrie is attached, I believe this movie is going to happen. However, I don't think they need to throw a boatload of cash. I don't believe that this movie needs a big budget. Um, this is maybe an odd comparison, and maybe it's not, but the original Deadpool movie, the first Deadpool movie, was made for $60 million. And that movie visually looks like you can tell where the money is. That movie doesn't look like it was made for $60 million. If 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 King Conan, if this movie was made for more than 100 million, I'd be shocked. I think they could do this movie for $100 million, maybe less. maybe 80. Because it doesn't. It would depend on the story. But I mean, let's for argument's sake. Okay. So I just looked something up. So there's that Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie that came out last year. Or no, I'm sorry. I don't know why I thought it was last year. 2023. It came out in 2023. That movie was made for 150 million, and I maybe they could do it for 150, but I don't see them spending like Avengers Endgame amounts of money on this movie. I really believe this movie um could be made for, $100 million. Um Maybe 150, but I really don't see this as a big like an Avengers Endgame kind of film. I think this is more along the lines of that Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. I I am so excited for this. This is and again, I'm a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. By the way, um if any I I watched this video called it was basically like Arnold Schwarzenegger's 5 rules for success. And I mean, he's a very intelligent person. Um, but anyway, but I don't think you need. I don't think this movie needs to be made for 300, $400 million. I think you can make it for 100 million, maybe a little bit more. Um, but yeah, I mean, and like I said, with Christopher McQuarrie directing this, especially with Christopher McQuarrie directing this, writing and directing, I really believe this is going to happen. And you know what? God damn, it's about time. It's about time. Um, and Arnold's still he's in ridiculous shape for a man who's almost 80 years old. Good lord. This I believe this movie's going to happen, and I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great, and it's about time. And there are a lot of people who are going to be so excited to hear this and to go see this movie. So anyway, jump in the comment section and let me know your thoughts about a King Conan movie happening, starring Arnold and written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie. Okay, so this next bit of news uh, is regarding one of my favorite actresses. By the name of Tessa Thompson. Now, if you don't know who Tessa Thompson is, um, Tessa Thompson played uh, the Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok, and she was in a couple of the other. She was in Avengers Endgame, and she played she played Valkyrie. Um, and she was also in the Creed movies with Michael B. Jordan, the Oscar-winning, by the way, Oscar-winning Michael B. Jordan. Um, and hmm, I have a tickle in my throat today, so I'm kind of staying on top of it by drinking water and taking Dayquil. Anyway, she's done a lot of interesting projects. She's done a couple of. Now, she has been in a couple of stinkers. That Men in Black International was terrible. But she as an actress, I love her, and she's done a lot of interesting stuff. She was in this, I believe it was for Amazon Prime. It was for Prime Video. It was a direct to um, yeah, it was direct to Prime Video. It was called Hedda, which was directed by Nia DaCosta, which I haven't watched. But she is attached to be in this new uh, film. This article is on Deadline, published by Matt Grobar. This article says Tessa Thompson is attached to produce and star in A Separation, a feature adaptation of Katie Kitamura's bestseller, to be written and directed by Cannes Award winner Jonas Carpignano, who I'm not familiar with. This article does go on to say, published by Riverhead Books in 2017, A Separation is the story of a woman who reluctantly travels from London to an isolated peninsula in southern Greece to find her estranged husband who has gone missing. Full of suspense and quiet turmoil, the book is about the mysteries of intimacy and slippery grief that comes in the wake of a marriage that ends. That sounds interesting. Um, this idea of you know I don't know. Uh, you know, I just this sounds weird to say, but like when I was in film school, um, you know, uh, I was asked a variation. I was asked, um, a, like the class was asked, um, what are your favorite kinds of stories, or like we were asked some. I forget exactly how the our professor phrased it, but she asked essentially a variation of, or some form of, like, what are your favorite kinds of stories, and I said good ones. Which I know was kind of a broad answer, but it's just like, as long as, like, like, and I often get asked what are your favorite kinds of movies, and it's like, I have genres that I gravitate more towards, but I'm a story and character person. you know I don't care what genre it is. If it's got a good story, good characters, sign me up. And this this idea of, you know this woman who travels to find her estranged husband. You know, like, it says here that the book is about um, the mysteries of intimacy and grief that comes in the wake of a failed marriage. And it's, I don't know why. I'm having trouble phrasing it properly, but I guess, you know I'm a child of divorce. My sister and I are children of divorce. My parents our parents got divorced when I was in high school. My sister was in middle school. Um, or no, I'm sorry, not middle school, junior high. Um, and um, you know, it's interesting. I always find it interesting how um, estranged couples or divorced couples um, handle separation or divorce. Not I'm not look, I'm not one to judge either way, but I always find it interesting like sometimes it's an amicable split and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it can get really ugly and but I do like the idea of like it, sorry, I'm having trouble d- saying what I want to say. Um this idea of look, just because we're separated or we're estranged from each other doesn't mean that I still don't doesn't mean that I don't care about you. Like it's just that we're estranged for a reason or we got separated for a reason, but I deep down still care about you and I don't wish you ill will. Um and it sounds like this is going to be that kind of a story. Um and it there have been and I always find it fascinating how sometimes art can imitate life, I guess is my point. In like I feel like this movie is going to like I feel like there have been real life estranged or separated or divorced couples who have gone through something like this in terms of like, hey, just because we're separated or estranged or divorced or whatever, that doesn't mean that I wish you ill will. Are you okay? Like I still care about you. Do you need to talk or something like that? And that was my point. It's like I feel like there are real life couples who are going to be able to identify with this movie. Um and this sounds great. Now and with somebody who has um the range of Tessa Thompson, I think this could be really, really good. Now, I'm not familiar with Jonas Carpignano, who is directing this movie, um, but so I don't have any um, comments about that. But all I can tell you is that Tessa Thompson is one of my favorite actresses, and this sounds really interesting and really kind of. I feel like this might pull at the heartstrings a little bit. Um, all I can tell you is that with Tessa Thompson involved in this immediately has my attention. So jump in the comment section and let me know your thoughts on uh, Tessa Thompson starring in a film adaptation of A Separation. Okay, so this next bit of news involves one of my, this uh, this next bit of news is quite interesting on a couple of levels. So, uh, there have been, I've tried to watch as I've gotten older. I've tried to and tried to expand my knowledge of film history. Um, I've tried to watch more foreign films. Um, I mentioned I think it was my last episode that I've that I there was this Swedish film, Swedish vampire film called Let the Right One In. And then there's the American remake called Let Me In, and both are good. Um, both are great, actually. Um, but there are uh, um, examples. I think there are more examples than people think of American remakes of foreign films. I think there are several. I mean, the American remake of The Ring is is awesome. It's awesome. If I'm thinking of the right one, um, yeah, that's the one. Oh no, I'm thinking of some. Okay, so there was Ringu, the Japanese film, and then there was The Ring, directed by Gore Verbinski, starring Naomi Watts. Um, the Ring, the American one, is really really good. It's really really good. Um, the Ringu, which came out in 19 in which is the Japanese one, is awesome. Ringu is awesome. And there are several examples of, at least in my opinion, of American remakes of foreign films being really good. There are also American remakes of foreign films that are terrible. Old Boy, for example. Old Boy is shit. The American one, that is. Old Boy is horrible. Now, there's this. Uh, let's see. There's this Korean film that was directed by Lee Wan Tai that came out in 2019. Excuse me. Um, it's a Korean film that came out in 2019 called The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil, which I have not seen. Um, so and the reason I bring that up is this. So there is going to be I want to make sure um I get this right. So yeah, so it came out in 2019. It's a South Korean film. Um and it's about a crime boss, and this crime boss and this detective joined forces, um who to catch a serial killer who attacked the crime boss and damaged the crime boss's reputation. I have heard it's great, but I have not seen it. Now, the reason I bring that up is there is going to be an American remake, or I should say English language remake, of The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil for Paramount Pictures. This article is on Joe Blow, published by Kevin Fraser. This article says James Wan is set to direct his first feature film since the release of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom in 2023. As the Hollywood Reporter reports that he signed on to helm an English language remake of The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil. The film starred Don Lee, best known for his breakthrough performance in Train to Busan as the gangster. The report notes that he's also attached to star in the English language remake. So that's interesting. So James Wan is one of my favorite filmmakers. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom notwithstanding. Well, he's done a couple of stinkers. Uh, but well, I mean, look, in my opinion, the films that he's directed that are good outweigh the bad. So, uh, James Wan obviously directed. He directed the first two Conjuring movies, which are awesome, and And I say this as someone like before before the first Conjuring movie, I had been very vocal about modern horror films. Um, to be honest with you, um, prior to the Conjuring, I like there was a period of time between there was a period of time in the 2000s for like 10 years, where a lot of horror movies were terrible. And I say that as a huge horror film fan. Like especially like hell, even in the 90s, most horror movies sucked. But there was a period of time for like 10 years where like horror movie came out, like a bunch of horror movies came out and they were all terrible. And then The Conjuring came out and I was like, you know, and but I saw it and I was like, whoa. Like the first Conjuring is awesome. I really enjoyed the second one too. But James Wan directed both of those. He also directed the original Saw, which I still maintain. Say whatever you want about all the other ones, but the original Saw is awesome. Is it high art? No. But it's awesome. I think it's awesome. So James Wan directed that. He also directed, um, I believe. Hold on. He also directed, um, I believe, the first two of the Insidious movies. Um, which the first one is decent, I would say. It's decent. The second one's not so great, and after the second one's not so great. Now, James Wan also directed. Well, he directed Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which is not so good. But he directed the first Aquaman too, and that first Aquaman movie is bloody awesome. It's so awesome. I am so glad that I saw that movie in the theater because just like the action set pieces and the underwater sequences and just the again, I mean, is it high art? No, but it's such a it that movie rocks. Okay, that movie is so it's just a raucous. It's just such a good time. It's so enjoyable. It's awesome. James Wan also directed this movie called, um, Malignant, which came out in 2021. And uh, it stars, Annabelle Wallace is in it. And she plays this woman who has visions of murders that turn out to be real. Like she doesn't think that they're real, but they are. And she uses, basically those murders lead to her uncovering this, uh, a secret from her past. And that movie is really, really good. It's really, really good. If you guys haven't seen Malignant, it's really, really good. And there's this scene in a jail cell that, uh, it just made my eyes light up. I was just like, holy God, this is awesome. So James Wan um, has had a couple of misses, but he's also had some huge, huge hits. And in my mind, the hits outweigh the misses, especially The Conjuring and Aquaman. I mean, Aquaman. Nobody thought that the first. I mean, the first Aquaman made $1 billion, um, which I don't think anybody thought would happen. I mean, we were all like, really, an Aquaman movie? Like, but let's face it, James Wan and Jason Momoa made Aquaman cool. Anyway, so James Wan is going to be directing this uh, this American remake of The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil. And let me just read this um, synopsis again. This movie, it follows a police officer and a crime boss who reluctantly team up to track down a serial killer, with each having their own motives to capture the killer. Double crosses and cat and mouse games ensue, along with a heaping helping of police versus criminals and gang versus gang action. This sounds really. This sounds. This kind of sounds. Um, this kind of reminds me of The Departed, a little bit, which would be great. Um, and I kind of like one of the things that I loved about the first Aquaman movie was that James Wan, up up until the first Aquaman movie, James Wan had been known for doing horror movies. And the original Aquaman, I mean, there were elements in there, like the trench sequence. My God, that trench sequence is so good. Um, but Aquaman was a departure from horror, and this sounds like another. He's branching out and doing other stuff, and I love when filmmakers do that. I I kind of had a I kind of have a love hate relationship with um, filmmakers uh, who do only one kind of movie. I'm gonna tell this story real quick. So my sister and I can't remember if my wife was there for this visit. Um, but my sister and I went to go see my father, and I told my father, because I hadn't seen him in a long time, and my father was like, what do you do, and I told him, I'm kind of an amateur filmmaker, and he said, he said a couple of things. He said he was surprised that I'm an amateur, that I that that I'm a filmmaker, and he also said he said he said I would steer clear of Alfred Hitchcock. And I said, why? I love Alfred Hitchcock movies. And he said, yeah, but he only did one kind of movie. And I was like, you know what? That's fair. But and I but I, so I always thought that was kind of funny. Look, I guess my point in telling that story is like, look, if you're someone like Alfred Hitchcock who's great at what he does, why depart from that? Alfred Hitchcock was the master of suspense, and everybody acknowledges that. However, if you have a desire to do other kinds of films, go ahead and do that. And I love that James Wan has a desire to do other kinds of films. Now, if he had a desire to just do horror movies for the rest of his career, I would applaud that. Do whatever you want. But it just his my dad's comment about Alfred Hitchcock kind of made me, what, like, yeah, that's a good point, but he was good at it. He was great at it. But anyway, so I love that I love that James Wan is branching out and doing another a different genre than he's done before. And this sounds like The Departed. This sounds like a little bit like The Departed, which is The Departed itself is a remake, I believe, of now it's gonna bug me. Hold on. The Departed. The Departed is a remake of a Hong Kong movie called Infernal Affairs. So The Departed is itself a remake. I will say again, I love the fact that James Wan is branching out and doing other kinds of films. Hopefully it goes better than Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom and the second Insidious movie, and hopefully it's a return to form for James Wan. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. Hopefully it's awesome. I love him as a filmmaker. And him doing this English language remake, it sounds really cool. It sounds really interesting. So jump in the comment section and let me know what you guys think about James Wan directing this English language remake of The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil. Okay, so one of the probably the biggest or one of the biggest pieces of news over the past, the biggest piece of entertainment news right now is even though it's not done, the deal isn't done, is Paramount Skydance, the purchase of Warner Brothers Discovery by Paramount Skydance. That is the biggest piece of entertainment news. The biggest piece of entertainment news right now. And there's and I say this to it's within the movie sphere and within the entertainment industry, and even among film fans like myself, there's been much trepidation about this move and what it could mean for the future of film and the film and movie theaters, even, and really just the future of the film industry, because there have been a lot of question marks, a lot of red flags, and it looks like, evidently there's another red flag. Now, I should point out that this article was published, what's today's date? Okay, so this article was published 3 weeks ago, on March 10th. So I don't, if something new has happened since March 10th, then I'm not aware of it. And I'm not saying I'm the authority on this. I'm saying I haven't heard if there's and I'm saying this not as an authority on the matter, but like this is kind of behind the scenes Hollywood news, which I love digging deep into. So if something new has happened since March 10th, I don't I don't know anyone. I'm not aware of it, and I don't know anyone else who is. But this is what happened on March 10th. So David Ellison, who is the CEO of um, Paramount Skydance, had the first town hall meeting with Warner Brothers. And there's this article on the Hollywood Reporter published by Boris Kitt who described, and the headline reads that this town hall meeting was described as turbulent. Yay. So, like I said, there was this town hall meeting. Uh, David Ellison and David Zaslav. David Zaslav is the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery. They had this article a little ways down here. David Ellison and David Zaslav had lunch on the Warner's lot on March 5th in the executive commissary. But Tuesday's meeting was a more formal introduction to the team that Ellison will be acquiring is in his $111 billion deal that brings together Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures, HBO, CBS, CNN, and many other major brands. Many in the room were hoping to hear of a plan moving forward or clarity on timetables or layoffs. Many walked away feeling their hopes were dashed. There was a lot of talk of storytelling and coming together, and Ellison was dismissive of reports of huge layoffs. Yet one person who attended the session adds, "We don't believe him." Another exec says that Ellison came across as passionate and very much a lover of movies. The CEO says he envisions the combined companies spending more on the creation of content than any other media company. Ellison has reiterated that the merged company would release at least 30 theatrical films per year from the combined studios. And he talked of having one streaming platform and one company, while also saying the plan was to keep both studio lots. He was confident and well-spoken, according to sources. A third executive tells The Hollywood Reporter that Ellison acknowledged the turbulent deal process of getting to today's place. But that may not have been enough for some in the room. There is still a tremendous amount of uncertainty over here, notes this exec. We were hoping for more. Okay. This, at least to me, is yet another red flag. For those who don't know, Paramount is in tremendous debt right now. And so why, I guess the question is, why, if you're in tremendous debt, hold on just a second, I'm so sorry. If you're in tremendous debt, then why would you go after, why do you want to acquire another film studio? Like, it's great that you love movies and you want to put out 30 movies a year, but what's your plan? Because you haven't even shown that you can run Paramount well. And your upcoming film slate is kind of a shit show, to say the least. And you also, David Ellison also, if I'm being honest, um, at least in my opinion, went about uh, acquiring Warner Brothers in a very kind of cranky kind of way. Uh, Kind of came off as childish. Um, so it's great that you love movies and you want to release 30 movies a year, but in this first town hall meeting, you didn't have a plan. You, at least if you had one, you weren't vocal about it. Netflix had a plan. So I think this is this could I I I think this raises another red flag, and I think this could, if this deal goes through, because it hasn't, and this article does point this out, this deal has yet to formally close. And remember, David Zaslav, who's CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, has kind of been very casually kind of saying, yeah, this might not happen. I think the fact that he didn't lay out a plan, I think that's another red flag. You can talk about how much you love movies all you want. What's your plan? How many people are you going to lay off? Am I going to or how many people are going to lose their jobs? To me, this raises yet another red flag, and also it does not. I This does not bode well for the future of the film industry. Um, I think this is. I think this could be incredibly damaging to the film industry, to be perfectly honest. So we'll see what happens. This is concerning. Um, this sounds like David Ellison just I don't know. I don't know. This is concerning to me. But so I just wanted to talk about that a little more. Give you a brief update. And again, if something has happened, if there's an update on this, then I don't know anybody who has heard any more information. Um, and I don't have any more. If there's recent information on it about an update on this, then I don't know about it, and I haven't talked to anybody who does. But this is concerning, I think. So I just wanted to talk about that briefly. If you guys have any opinions on that, maybe I'm wrong about this. I don't know. And it also sounds, and I don't want to get too off into the weeds here, but there could be political motivations behind this as well, and that doesn't sit well with a lot of people, I don't think. So there's that. But anyway, if you have any thoughts, or I just wanted to talk about that for a little minute, for a little bit. So jump in the comment section and let me know what you guys think about this. So, moving on to something much more pleasant. You might recall from a few weeks ago that there's this new Lord of the Rings movie coming called The Hunt for Golem, which is going to be directed by Andy Serkis. And it's going to take place in that time period. There's the part in the book, at least so in the book, Gandalf and Aragorn try to find Golem, but and in the movie it's just Gandalf, but they try to find Golem to find but he gets captured, and he reveals where the ring is. And there's this movie coming called The Hunt for Golem, and it's going to be about Gandalf and Aragorn trying to find Golem. And I believe Aragorn is going to be recast. And there's been more casting news regarding The Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Golem. This article is on The Hollywood Reporter, published by Aaron Couch. This article says that Kate Winslet has wrapped up her time in the Avatar universe, but is joining another franchise with close ties to New Zealand. The Oscar winner is in talks. You know what? I think I'm going to hold off on this until there's more concrete news. I do apologize. I'm going to hold off on this bit of news until there's something more concrete, because if I remember right, there's more Lord of the Ring. There's more news regarding this movie that I didn't want to. I want to talk about all together instead of separate episodes. I'm sorry. Let's move on very quickly. I want to move on to this. So let's see here. Hold on just a second. Disney. Okay. Hold on. I'm so sorry about that. Okay. So let's move on to this. So, for those who don't know, there is there's this upcoming TV series, or I guess streaming series, on HBO Max called Lanterns. And it's going to be about. It's going to star two. It's essentially, it's not. It's going to be a Green Lantern series, but it's called Lanterns, which leads many to believe that it's not just going to star Green Lanterns. It's going to star like the Red Lanterns and all the other colors. Now, hold on just a second. And so Kyle Chandler is going to play an older Hal Jordan, and they've released the trailer, and it's awesome. So Kyle Chandler is going to play Hal Jordan, and Aaron Pierre is going to play Jon Stewart. Now, there is this article. I want to get into this piece of news. and then talk about it a little bit. Because this is something that I find interesting, and I'll tell you why. This article is on Joe Blow, published by Steve Saig. Let's see here. I want to make sure I get this right. Ooh. Oh dear. Oh dear. Come on. Why aren't you working? Hold on. There we go. Let's see here. Okay, so this article is on Joe Blow, published by Steve Saig. And this article says that officially Aaron Pierre, who plays Jon Stewart in the Lanterns TV series, is going to be in the Superman sequel, Man of Tomorrow, which is the sequel to the Superman movie that came out last year. So the character of Jon Stewart is going to be in Man of Tomorrow. Now, normally I wouldn't talk about something like this because in my mind, how do I want to phrase this properly? In my mind, like, when you have a film franchise like DC or like Star Wars or like Marvel, where actors and actresses appear in films and television, to me, it's not surprising. Oh, such and such is going to be in, like it's like all this Avengers Doomsday news, right? It's like, oh, they're coming back, and he's coming back, and she's coming back, and blah blah blah, and it's just like, okay, I'm really not surprised because they've been in this franchise for like at this point, I'm not like. I'd be surprised by somebody showing up who wasn't announced. You know what I mean? Like when they announced that James Marsden is going to be in Avengers Doomsday as Cyclops, I was like, one, that's awesome, and two, but I'm not surprised considering he played Cyclops before, and it's just like, it's not news because they've been a part of this established franchise already, if that makes any sense. So normally I wouldn't talk about something like this because it's like, well, this newly established DC universe is both film and television. Aaron Pierre, why wouldn't he be in, like, he just because he's part of a TV series, why wouldn't he appear in a future film or, make an appearance in a future film or have a Green Lantern movie or, whatever. Like, why? Like, of course he is, because he's part of this established universe. Like, there's nothing surprising here. However, Aaron Pierre being in Man of Tomorrow as Jon Stewart is interesting because, and this could change, it's interesting because Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan, at least for the time being, is not. There's no Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan has not been announced for any future DC projects, as far as I know. Past, like, he's going to be in Lanterns, the TV show, and you already have um, Guy Gardner, played brilliantly by Nathan Fillion. So he's going to be in the Lanterns TV show. Kyle Chandler is Hal Jordan, but he hasn't been announced in any DC projects after that. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, is because Aaron Pierre is going to be in Man of Tomorrow. But as of right now, there's no future announcement for Hal Jordan. Which leads me to speculate, and I could be wrong, but if I'm right, it might piss off a lot of people. Maybe something happens to Hal Jordan in this Lanterns TV series. And maybe there's a reason why Hal Jordan isn't in Man of Tomorrow. Um, and maybe there's a reason why um, there's no future. As far as I know, there hasn't been any future announcement regarding Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan. So maybe it's a case of like maybe Hal Jordan retires or dies or something, which I know could piss a lot of people off. But the other thing too is that you have to remember is that James Gunn, who is the creative overseer of this franchise, he is well known for respecting the lore, but also at the same time going for the more obscure and less popular iterations of characters. Like he's bringing in Damian Wayne as Robin. That's going to be awesome. And I was like, whoa, like Damian's a little shit, you know. So maybe something happens to Hal Jordan in this Lanterns TV series, and which could irritate a lot of people. But I'm one of these people. I'm gonna be honest. I'm one of these people. Like, if like I'm not a like I'm just a fan. You're the creator. You're the showrunner. You're the if you've got a plan, then who am I to question it? As long as it's written well, you know, you do what you do. But Jon Stewart being in Man of Tomorrow, that could get really interesting, especially if he has scenes with Guy Gardner. Oh my god. Oh my god. You know. But maybe it's a case of like, look, I'm not look because if you watch the trailer, it's pretty clear that uh, Hal Jordan is training Jon Stewart. Maybe he's not training a partner. Maybe he's training his replacement. I don't know. We'll see. I just find it interesting that Aaron Pierre as Jon Stewart was announced for Man of Tomorrow, but not Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan. Maybe he will be in it. I don't know. I could be way off, you know. But I just wanted to talk about that. Like I said, I don't usually talk about stuff like this because it's like, well, that's not surprising considering he's part of this franchise, and it encompasses film and television. So why wouldn't he be? But I found it interesting that Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan has not, at least to my knowledge, been announced for anything in the future. So I just found that interesting. Okay. So jump in the comment section. Let me know, Do you think I'm off base with my speculation? What do you guys think? With that down, sorry, I'm getting my notes together. Let's move on to this. So, one of my favorite franchises right now is um, the Quiet Place movies. Um, I loved I had heard how awesome the first A Quiet Place movie was, and it was one of those things. Sometimes you hear how awesome or how great a movie is, and then you watch it and you're just like, eh. Like sometimes it's overhyped. That was not the case with me in A Quiet Place. I was the first A Quiet Place was awesome. It's awesome. The second Quiet Place, I loved the second one too. I know a lot of people I know some people didn't. I loved it, and I also loved there was A Quiet Place Day One, which starred Lupita Nyong'o, um, and that was great too. This franchise is one of my favorites. Well, A Quiet Place 3 has announced its cast. This article is on Joe Blow, published by Steve Seg. Let's see. So, uh, John Krasinski, who will be, I believe, he will be doing the third one. Let me see. I want to make sure I get my information correct. Um, so John Krasinski, who played famously played Jim on The Office. John Krasinski, he was a co-writer. He directed the first one. He was also a co-writer. Um, and then um, he was also uh, he wrote and he directed the second one, and he was, I believe, um, the uh, sole. He was a co-writer on. Um, he was a co-writer on the second one as well. Um, um, I want to. Sorry, I'm making sure I get my information. Um, Correct. Yeah. So John Krasinski directed A Quiet Place 1 and 2. He was also a co-writer on those movies, and I believe he will be uh, doing the same for A Quiet Place Part 3. And a week ago, he announced he got on social media, and there was this image of, like, he had this pile of scripts that had um, the names on the covers of the scripts of the cast who is um, going to be in A Quiet Place Part 3. So, and then, uh, so the cast, so this cast is the list of this. The cast list is on this article on Joe Blow, and again, it was published by Steve Sag. Um, Jack O'Connell, Jason Clarke, Katie O'Brien, Emily Blunt will be returning. Killian Murphy is coming back, um, and I believe the Millicent Simmons and Noah Jupe, who I believe are the two children, um, they're going to be returning as well. Um, I'm so the big one for me is Jack O'Connell. He has kind of he's done some great horror, and he's kind of made a name for himself being in great horror movies. Recently, he was in 28 Years Later, and he was in Sinners, the Oscar-winning Sinners, by the way. Um, so Jack O'Connell, that's going to be great to see him doing another um, horror, being in another horror movie. Jason Clarke, I've talked about this before, but I'm not really. I mean, maybe it'll be different this time. But Jason Clarke, he was in most recently in A House of Dynamite and The Last Frontier. I'm not really a fan of him. I mean, he kind of has the same face for every emotion kind of way of acting. I I don't I don't really I'm not really a fan, but maybe it'll be different this time around. So Katie O'Brien, I'm not. She was in Love Lies Bleeding, which I know people that worked on that movie. Um, uh, she was also involved in Queens of the Dead. Um, but John Krasinski is going to be in charge of this whole thing once again. God, I cannot wait for this movie. Um, I like I said, I've this is one of my favorite film franchises. Um, these movies are awesome, and I was nervous. I was nervous about A Quiet Place Day One because John Krasinski wasn't creatively uh, like he wasn't directing or one of the co-writers. I don't think. Um, yeah, I mean, he was in charge of the story, but he didn't write the script. But A Quiet Place Day One is great, and I love this. I cannot wait for this. I'm so glad that Killian Murphy's coming back. I'm glad that obviously Emily Blunt is coming back. She is a badass in those movies. She is awesome. You know, the end of the end the end of the first Quiet Place when she's with a shotgun, and I'm like, oh shit, it's about to go down. Like it's gonna get real, And I'm just like, that's awesome, that's awesome. And the whole scene where she's um, giving birth in the bathtub is that is an Oscar caliber scene. I mean, it really is. Um, I love those movies. God, I can't wait for this movie. If I I swear, if I go see this movie and people are crunching popcorn during the quiet moments of this movie, I'm gonna raise hell. But no, seriously, I love these movies. I can't wait for this. I'm glad that we're getting returning cast members and new ones. Jack O'Connell in this movie. He's going to be great. So jump in the comments section, and I believe John Krasinski is going to be writing and directing this movie again. But yeah, so jump in the comments section and let me know what you guys think about this. Okay, so um, let's okay. Let's move on to this. So uh one of my favorite, I like I said previously, I try to watch a lot of uh foreign films. And one of my favorite action um one of my favorite action movie icons is Jackie Chan. I love Jackie Chan. I need to see more of his foreign stuff. But I'm such a huge fan. I recently watched. There's this movie that he did, um, with Pierce Brosnan called The Foreigner, and it's really really good. It's really really good. And uh, he can still go, man. I mean, it's a pretty it's a decent movie. Um, and he's for a man of 71. I mean, he can still go. I mean, he's. But I'm a huge fan of Jackie Chan, and his American stuff as of late has been. I would love if his American work was more like The Foreigner and less like. I would love if his American stuff was more serious and less silly, because it feels like over the past several years Jackie Chan's work here in America has skewed silly. Um, it's one of the reasons I like The Foreigner was it was more serious, and you get to see Jackie Chan um, do what he does best. Um, and now that being said, I'm such a huge fan that whatever he's in, whatever he's involved in, I'll watch it. You know. Um, so there's this article here on Variety published by Naaman Ramachandran. And this article says that Jackie Chan and director Liu Zhang have teamed for Perfect Agents. Perfect Agents, an action comedy set to begin production in September. Let's see, this article goes on to say the live action and CG hybrid feature is directed and produced by Zhang, whose previous credits include Fox Hunt and Bleeding Steel. Now, I believe Bleeding Steel also starred Jackie Chan. Um, that movie came out in 2017. Yeah, it also starred Jackie Chan. I heard it was terrible. And what so this article says that the film follows a veteran agent on the verge of retirement who is pulled back into the field after the Sangjingdui Golden Mask, one of China's most prized national treasures, is targeted by an international theft operation. The reluctant hero pairs with a technologically advanced spy dog on a chase across continents, from Europe back to China. The project draws inspiration from action spectacles that blend live action performance with animated characters. God, I hate this so much. Why, Jackie? Why? Why do you have. Why? I just want to see you in a serious ass kicking movie. God. Um. Now, uh, Fox Hunt, which was also directed by Liu Zhang. Um, I don't know too much about. I don't know too much about. But it starred Tony Leung, who played the Mandarin in the Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And he was awesome in that. Tony, yeah. But I don't know too much about that movie. God, why? Why? This sounds so stupid. Nobody wants to see. Well, maybe some people do. I don't know. Perfect Agents. I knew. Just as soon as I read Perfect Agents, I was like, this movie is gonna fucking. Jesus. I mean, it's fun to make movies for children, but I, I I don't know. I don't know. Uh, I mean, I have nothing positive to say about this. Technologically advanced spy dog on a chase across continents. Okay. Maybe I'll have a glass of bourbon while I'm watching this movie because bourbon makes everything better. Um, I'll look. I am sure that there is going to be an audience for this movie. I'm also sure that without that glass of bourbon in my hand, I will not be part of that audience. I look. Is this the kind of movie that I personally want Jackie Chan to that I personally want to see Jackie Chan in? No. Will there be an audience for this movie? Yes. I if look, I'll probably end up watching this at home cuz this sounds terrible. Look, I would love to be wrong about this. I would love for this movie with Jackie Chan and a cybernetically enhanced fucking dog. I would love for this movie to be awesome. I want every movie I see to be awesome. This sounds terrible. This sounds terrible. Anyway, I'm sorry I don't have many positive things to say about this. But Bleeding Steel I heard was terrible. This sounds awful. I would love to be wrong. Uh maybe a couple years from now, after I watch this movie with a glass of bourbon in my hand, I'll let you know what I thought of it. But as of right now, this sounds completely terrible. But anyway, uh, what do you guys think about this? Do you guys think this sounds as terrible as I think it sounds? Let me know. Okay. Um, okay, so a couple more things I want to talk about today. Um, So I've talked about in the past about look, I understand that these Disney live action remakes. I understand there are people who are completely against them, but I also understand that there are also people that thoroughly enjoy them. And I, for the most part, have thoroughly enjoyed them. I'm not going to go down the list again like I did last time, but for the most part, I think they've been good to great. Um, Mostly good, um, but again, my favorite is the live action Jungle Book. I love that movie. And I thought the live action Lilo and Stitch was pretty good. I liked it. Um, Now, uh, I and I say this all the time. Is it better than the original? Lord, no. Did it need to be? No. It just needed to be a good movie. I completely reject this idea that sequels or remakes need to be as good as the original. Just make it a good movie. If it's a good movie, people will see it. Or that sequels or remakes need to be better than the original. I completely reject that. And I really liked. I really enjoyed the live action Lilo and Stitch, and not only that, it made $1 billion at the box office. So it should come as no surprise that there is going to be a sequel. This article is on MovieWeb, published by Richard Fink. Sorry, I'm a little stuffy today, if you can't tell. This article is on MovieWeb, published by Richard Fink. Disney has set a release date for a live action Lilo and Stitch 2. Now, it also should be pointed out that the live action Lilo and Stitch was originally intended to go straight to Disney Plus, but it opened in theaters and made $1 billion. Um, and a sequel was announced to be on development, and I find this kind of funny. The sequel was announced to be in development on June 26th, uh, June 6th, 2026. So 6/26, which I thought was pretty clever. um, Now, this article, like I said, it points out that Disney has set a release date for the live action Lilo and Stitch 2. This article says May 26th, 2028. This film will open on Memorial Day weekend, like the first one did. I know there is a sequel to the animated Lilo and Stitch. I have not seen it. I have not watched it. I believe it went straight to DVD. I don't know if if this is going to go the same story and plot as that one, because I haven't watched it. You look. I know that people, I I I really liked this one. I hope all I want is for this to be a good movie, because this one, it did get mixed reviews. I'm one of the people that really enjoyed it. It made $1 billion, so naturally, it's going to be a natural instinct to make a sequel, and I personally think it was the right one. I don't. I think there are things that they could improve upon in the sequel. Um, I think, like the character relationships and things like that. I think there are things that they could improve upon when doing the sequel. But I'm looking forward to it. Um, I know that there are going to be people who denounce it and who people aren't interested, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But clearly, there were people who were interested in seeing the first one. And I think it's a smart move to release it on Memorial Day weekend like the first one. So I'm looking forward to this. So I just wanted to talk about that for a minute. Lilo and Stitch 2 coming Memorial Day weekend 2028. What do you guys think about that? Okay, so one last bit of news here, and it involves one of my favorite. It's a very interesting project involving one of my favorite actresses. There's an actress by the name of Marion Cotillard. Marion Cotillard. She was in, I think she was in Inception. She played the wife of Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. She was also in The Dark Knight Rises. She played Talia al Ghul. But the film that I most remember her for, she played Edith Piaf in a film called La Vie en Rose. And she was brilliant in that movie. And she won the Oscar. It's a movie called La Vie en Rose. If you guys haven't seen it, you should watch it if you're interested in that kind of film. But she's one of my favorite actresses. And so she has this upcoming movie that she's going to be in, which sounds very interesting. This article is on Variety, published by Angelique Jackson. This article says Academy Award winner Marion Cotillard and Emmy and Golden Globe nominee Walton Goggins will star in Job, a provocative adaptation of the biblical book of Job. In the film, from writer-director Yuval Adler, Goggins, and Cotillard. Marion Cotillard was also on The Morning Show. So Walton Goggins and Marion Cotillard will play a couple attempting to mount a bold, immersive staging of the Book of Job. They play a couple attempting to mount a bold, immersive staging of the Book of Job. The Bible story centers on a man named Job, whose faith in God is tested through extreme suffering. He loses his wealth and children and health, but he ultimately remains faithful. Let's see. So Yuval Adler, this movie will move between timelines, juxtaposing the ancient wager between God and Satan with the modern-day unraveling of a marriage under pressure. An early synopsis of the film explains. As their private lives bleed into their performance, a standoff on set raises raises an unexpected question: who gets to play God? This is interesting because it's about a couple. It's not necessarily about. It's not a movie based on the Book of Job. It's a movie about a couple who uh, they 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 uh, they stage this production of the Book of Job. And it's a case of real life affecting their performances, which I find interesting. And now, okay, this is interesting for me because I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God, but I have seen, and I don't mean to denigrate or talk down to people who do, and that, if you believe in God, that's fine. I'm not here to shove my beliefs down your throat. All I can tell you is that I'm an atheist. I do not believe in God. However, I have seen uh, religious. I guess the term is faith-based films, and I have seen a few in my time. Like the Ten Commandments, which I think is it's an excellent film. I have seen there was that movie with Christian Bale called Exodus: Gods and Kings, which is terrible. But I thought it was an interesting way to tell that story. Even though I'm an atheist, I do appreciate the craft and um, the um, I do appreciate the filmmaking craft that goes into making those kinds of films, like the Passion of the Christ. If you believe in that story, if you believe in that sort of thing, that movie will is a very powerful film to watch. And even if it's not, even if you don't believe in it, it's a solid film. It's a very well made film. The craft of the filmmaking, the makeup and all that, all the effects and stuff is the creative way they told that story. Like, that's one of the things. Even though the Exodus: Gods and Kings movie was terrible as a whole, there were creative things in that movie that I thought were interesting. The way they presented the 10 plagues of Egypt. I thought was very from a filmmaking craft standpoint. I thoroughly enjoyed the way they told that story. And I will say, even though I'm not, I do know, I am familiar with the story of Job, and I am familiar that, yeah, and again, if you believe in this sort of thing, God wasn't very nice to Job at all, which I think is in and so, but this idea of, so all my beliefs and all my thoughts aside, this idea of the wager between God and Satan and that unraveling a marriage, like essentially their private lives bleed into their performance. That is interesting to me, and that, you know, which one is God and which one is Satan. Um, and that could be a very interesting film to watch, and I think, um, with not most but many faith-based films, I think this could ruffle some feathers, which I think are the most interesting kinds of films to watch in general, really. Um, I'm not familiar with the director, Yuval Adler. I love Marion Cotillard. Walton Goggins is on quite a hot streak lately. Um, you know, and I've liked him. I've liked him for a long time. I mean, he was great in he was great in the second Ant-Man movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp. I thought he was great in that. He's been on a hot streak lately. But this sounds like a very interesting concept, and even from someone who, uh, like myself, I'm like this like creatively, the craft of the kind of craft, the craft of the filmmaking that's going to go into making a movie like this. I can appreciate the movie from that standpoint, and I think it's going to be a very interesting, it could be a very interesting story and very kind of thought-provoking, and being like, well, that's interesting, like who gets, like the article points out, who gets to play God, and which one of us is which. I think that could be very thought-provoking. um so I just wanted to talk about that for a minute. I mean, it sounds like it could, uh yeah, yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. Well, that'll do it for this episode today. I'm gonna try to do one more. um I've been going on for almost 2 hours now, so I feel like I need a break, and I feel like I need to give you guys a break. So, but I'm going to try to be on a little later. I hope you enjoyed the show today. I'm sorry if I seemed a little flustered. Uh, but I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you continue to enjoy the show. Uh, Go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you feel compelled to. Um, and my sister, my wife Katie, and my sister and myself are going to go see. We're finally going to go see Project Hail Mary this coming weekend, which I'm very excited about, because I've heard it's great. And I've told everybody. I said, if that movie is anything like the book, it's going to be a fucking masterpiece, and evidently it is. So yeah, I will be on later. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and as always, I will see you at the movies.